The sky over GalacticPrime was red with fire. Towers that had once gleamed in the morning sun now lay in smoke and rubble. Explosions shook the ground, sending tremors across the city. Alien civilians ran in every direction, some carrying what little possessions they could salvage. Others stumbled, their eyes wide with fear, unable to believe the destruction unfolding before them. At the center of the chaos, the alien leaders met in a high dome of polished metal. Their council chamber had been spared the worst of the attacks, but the sounds of war echoed even here. Commander Valen, the tallest of the council members, slammed a clawed hand onto the table. "They breach every wall we set," he growled. "Our fleets are falling one by one. We cannot hold them." Advisor Lura shook her head, her antennae trembling. "We've tried everything. Shields, traps, reinforcements. Nothing works. They are too strong." Outside, the enemy armada continued its relentless assault. Their ships moved in precise patterns, firing beams that sliced through the city's defenses like butter. Even the most advanced weapons of GalacticPrime seemed useless. Entire districts burned and smoke covered the horizon, turning night into a fiery nightmare. A murmur ran through the council chamber. Some council members spoke of surrender. Others suggested retreat. But Commander Valen silenced them with a sharp gesture. "No," he said. "We do not surrender. We will fight until the last breath," but his gaze turned toward the largest holoscreen in the chamber. Images of legendary humans appeared, each performing incredible feats of bravery and skill. "There is one hope. There is one being even they fear. A human." The room fell silent. "A human here?" Advisor Lura's eyes widened. "Humans are myths, legends. They are not real. No single being could face an entire fleet and survive." Valen's voice was calm but carried weight. "That is why we must call one. Desperate times require desperate measures. We have no choice. If this human comes, they may turn the tide." The council hesitated. The thought of relying on an outsider, an unpredictable human, frightened them. But it was the only option left. Far above the city, a shimmering portal began to form. Energy crackled, bending light in strange ways. The human would arrive soon, crossing space and time to reach this desperate world. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the human known as Captain Elias was preparing for his next mission. He had heard the rumors, of course. Stories of worlds in chaos, of civilizations crushed under superior forces, but a call from GalacticPrime was unusual. He had never been summoned directly by an alien council before. When the portal opened before him, Elias stepped through calmly. He surveyed the burning city below, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Well," he muttered, "looks like they really needed me." His arrival caused an immediate stir. Alien soldiers froze in awe and fear. Even the council members who had called him could not hide their astonishment. Humans were rare, even in legend, and the few who had encountered them lived to tell stories of courage, cunning, and unpredictability. Elias did not speak immediately. He observed, taking in the city, the attacking armada, and the scattered defenses. His mind worked quickly, noting patterns, weaknesses, and possible strategies. Unlike the aliens, who followed strict protocols and routines, he relied on instinct, improvisation, and experience. Finally, he turned to the council. "I need complete control of your forces," he said plainly. "I don't follow orders. I make them. If we work together, we can stop this attack. But I fight my way." Some council members hesitated, uneasy at his confidence. Lura frowned. "This is dangerous. You don't know our systems, our weapons." Elias smiled slightly. "I'll figure it out. Trust me, within hours the human moved through the city." He avoided the heaviest fighting, focusing instead on small squads of attackers, setting traps and creating confusion among the enemy ranks. Using guerrilla tactics, he struck where the alien armada least expected. A single human could do more damage than an entire squad of alien soldiers, and the enemy quickly learned that. At the same time, he taught alien soldiers how to think differently. "Move," he ordered. "Don't wait for orders. Watch, adapt, and strike when the time is right." The soldiers, initially hesitant, followed his lead. Slowly, they began to understand that victory was not about strength alone, but cleverness, speed, and courage. Outside the city, the attackers noticed unusual resistance. Their formations were breaking, their precise attacks failing to achieve results. Confusion spread among their ranks. Rumors began circulating that a human had arrived. One human, against their fleet. Back in the council chamber, Valen watched the battle through the holoscreens. For the first time in hours, he saw hope. The human fights differently, he murmured. Not like us. Not like them. He is unstoppable. Lura nodded slowly. Legends were right. Humans are not to be underestimated. The sound of explosions continued, but now there were signs of progress. The human had taken a small group of alien soldiers and executed a daring strike against an enemy command post. The attackers panicked, their communication disrupted. Reports of retreating ships reached the council, bringing a cautious cheer. Despite the small victories, Elias knew the battle was far from over. The enemy was clever, relentless, and still outnumbered them. But he also knew one thing: humans had survived impossible situations before. And here, on GalacticPrime, he would show why the galaxy feared humans. As night fell over the burning city, he stood on a ruined tower, surveying the battlefield. Smoke and fire swirled around him, but he was calm, focused, and ready. This was only the beginning. The galaxy had heard of humans, but now they would see one in action. And the attackers? They would learn that a single human could change the course of an entire war. The sky above GalacticPrime was still ablaze with fire. But now, a new presence stirred hope among the terrified alien defenders. Captain Elias moved like a shadow through the ruined streets, his boots silent against the cracked metal and stone. Despite the chaos around him, he walked with a calm confidence that seemed impossible. Alien soldiers who watched him could only gape. Commander Valen's holoscreen buzzed with updates. "The human has moved through the eastern sector," he said. He avoided direct contact, yet the attackers are in chaos. Advisor Lura nodded. "He fights. Differently. Not like us. Not like them." Elias crouched behind the wreckage of a fallen Skytram, scanning the battlefield. Enemy units moved with precision, but they were rigid, predictable. He smiled faintly. "Predictable," he muttered. "I like that." From his vantage point, he watched a group of enemy soldiers preparing to fire on a trapped alien squad. Their weapons would have torn through shields in seconds. Elias acted quickly. He pulled a small device from his belt and hurled it toward the enemy formation. A soft hum filled the air, and suddenly, the attackers' weapons fizzled and went silent. Confused, they scattered. The trapped alien squad seized the moment to escape. One young soldier ran toward him, awe in his eyes. "Human, how did you do that?" Elias glanced at him. "Quick thinking and a little luck. Remember, it's not the size of the weapon, it's how you use it." The soldier nodded, still wide-eyed, but Elias had already moved on, disappearing among the ruins. Every move he made was precise, deliberate, and unpredictable. In the command center, Valen and the council watched closely. "He's doing what we could not," Lura whispered. "He's turning the battle with only a few troops. He doesn't fight like us, and that makes him unstoppable." Valen's voice was low, almost reverent. "This is why humans are feared, even by those stronger than us. They don't follow rules, they make them." Outside, Elias continued his campaign. He moved from street to street, from alley to alley, disrupting enemy communications and disabling weapons. He set clever traps, using the city's ruins to his advantage. Where alien soldiers saw danger, he saw opportunity. Every success built hope among the defenders, who had long since feared they would be wiped out. As night deepened, the human paused atop a crumbled observation tower. Below, alien forces began moving with renewed energy. Inspired by the human who seemed impossible to stop, he gestured, directing small squads, showing them how to coordinate, improvise, and fight smartly. For the first time, the alien soldiers realized they could fight on their own terms. They did not need to rely on rigid strategies that had failed them for hours. Elias had taught them one simple truth: courage and cleverness could overcome overwhelming odds. Meanwhile, the enemy commanders were growing uneasy. Their fleet had faced many foes, but nothing like this. Reports of their losses were mounting. Entire squads disappeared, taken down by a single human operating in ways they could not predict. Fear began to creep into their ranks. Lieutenant Rylock, an enemy officer, paced in front of his holoscreen. "This cannot be. One human against our entire fleet? How?" His superior, General Torvik, scowled. "I don't know, but this human is different. We need to adapt or we lose everything." Back in the city, Elias had discovered a central energy hub the enemy was using to coordinate attacks. He moved quietly, studying its defenses. Then, with careful precision, he disabled key power conduits, causing a chain reaction that cut off communications for half the attacking force. The result was immediate. Enemy units paused, disorganized and vulnerable. Alien defenders seized the chance to strike. Explosions lit the night sky as alien forces, once cornered, pushed forward. The tide of battle shifted in a way the Council had never thought possible. Baleen rubbed his claws together, smiling despite the smoke-filled room. "It is happening," he said. "The human is turning the battle." Lura's antennae twitched nervously. "But he is just one. One human cannot hold them back forever." Elias, perched above the city, heard the distant sounds of retreat. He smirked. "One human is all it takes," he muttered. "When they fight smart and they refuse to back down, even the strongest enemy falls." In the chaos, Elias spotted a group of young alien soldiers trapped on a collapsed bridge, pinned under debris while enemy troops closed in. Without hesitation, he leapt down, lifting beams and rubble with surprising strength. The soldiers scrambled free, gasping in awe. "Go! Move fast!" he shouted. "And remember, think. Don't just fight." They obeyed, inspired not only by his strength but by his courage. It was contagious. Across the city, alien soldiers began to act with the confidence and initiative they had never known before. Elias was not just fighting the enemy. He was changing the very way they thought about war. As the hours passed, more reports reached the Council. Small victories stacked into larger ones. Enemy reinforcements were cut off. Supplies vanished. Confusion and fear spread among the attackers like wildfire. The legend of the human, once a distant story, was becoming reality. That night, Elias returned to the observation tower. He looked down at the city he had just helped defend, smoke rising from destroyed ships and burning districts. Despite the destruction, hope flickered among the alien survivors. They were tired, scared, but no longer hopeless. Commander Valen approached, cautiously respectful. "Human, your methods, your courage, it is beyond anything we imagined." Elias shrugged lightly. "I do what I can, but the fight is not over. They will come again, bigger, stronger. We need to be ready." Lura stepped forward, hesitant but curious. "Why do you fight like this? So different from us, so fearless." Elias smiled faintly. "We humans, we survive by thinking, adapting, and never giving up. We don't always have the strongest weapons or the largest armies, but we have something every enemy fears, the unexpected." The Council nodded, understanding dawning. They had called a human out of desperation. But now they realized that humans were not just legends, they were forces of change, capable of inspiring hope and courage even in the darkest moments. As the first light of dawn crept across the ruined city, the alien leaders prepared to face the next wave. But for the first time they did so not with fear but with determination. They had seen what a human could do, and it had given them the strength to fight back. Above them all, Captain Elias watched. His mission was only beginning, but already he had turned despair into hope. The attackers would learn soon enough that humans were not just fighters. They were symbols of courage, ingenuity, and unpredictability. And that was a combination no enemy could ever fully overcome. The city of GalacticPrime was quiet for the first time in hours, but the calm was deceptive. Smoke curled from burning buildings and the air was thick with ash. Alien soldiers moved cautiously through the streets, wary of hidden enemies. They had survived the first wave of attacks, but the larger, more organized enemy forces were still on the way. Captain Elias surveyed the battlefield from a tall tower, his eyes sharp, calculating. He saw the enemy fleet regrouping in the sky, preparing for another strike. Their numbers were immense, but Elias didn't flinch. Where others saw impossible odds, he saw opportunity. He turned to a group of alien soldiers who had followed him through the battle. "Listen carefully," he said. "They are strong but predictable. They rely on numbers, formations, and rules. We will not play by their rules. We will strike where they least expect, move faster than they can react, and use the city to our advantage." The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Most had never seen a human fight. They had only heard legends. But something in Elias's calm voice, his steady gaze, and the results of the last battle gave them hope. "Follow me," Elias said, and he led them through narrow alleys and broken streets. The enemy was advancing, confident in their numbers. But Elias used the terrain to his advantage. Collapsed buildings, burned out vehicles, and shattered towers became tools of defense. He set traps that slowed the attackers and forced them into tight spaces where their weapons were less effective. The first engagement of the day began in a ruined plaza. Enemy troops poured through the streets, confident and organized. Elias waited at a high vantage point. He watched the enemy soldiers advance in precise formations, their confidence unshaken. Then, without warning, he fired a series of well-aimed shots at their communication devices, cutting off coordination. Enemy soldiers hesitated, confusion spreading like wildfire. From the shadows, Elias and his small team of alien fighters struck with precision, hitting supply lines and disabling key weapons. "Move fast. Strike, then disappear," Elias shouted, his voice calm but commanding. The alien soldiers followed his lead, moving with a new kind of confidence. They began improvising, thinking for themselves, striking in ways they had never imagined. By mid-morning, the tide of battle had shifted. Enemy units that had seemed unstoppable were now retreating, regrouping, or being forced into traps. Even though the attackers outnumbered the defenders, Elias's clever use of terrain, timing, and deception allowed a small force to hold the line. Back at the council chamber, Commander Valen watched through the holoscreen. "I can't believe it," he muttered. "One human is turning the tide of battle. He's teaching our soldiers to fight, to think, to survive. This is remarkable." Advisor Lura leaned forward, her eyes wide. "Humans are more than legends. They are extraordinary. He does not fight like us, but that is why he wins. He does not follow patterns. He creates them," Valen nodded. "And now our soldiers are learning. They are no longer afraid. They act with courage, even against overwhelming odds. This is what the galaxy fears about humans. Strength, yes, but also the ability to inspire others." As the sun climbed higher, the enemy launched a heavier attack. Dozens of ships entered the atmosphere, dropping troops and weapons. Many alien soldiers were exhausted, their morale shaken by previous battles. But Elias was ready. He split his team into small units, each tasked with specific missions. Some would sabotage supply lines, others would attack the enemy from behind. Elias himself led a strike team to the central enemy landing zone, where he had identified a cluster of advanced weapons and command units. The team moved silently, using shadows and rubble as cover. Enemy soldiers were caught off guard when Elias and his squad attacked. They had underestimated a human's ability to move with speed, precision, and intelligence. Within minutes, critical weapons were destroyed, enemy communication disrupted, and several armored vehicles were disabled. Alien soldiers watching the battle from a distance could hardly believe what they were seeing. "How can one human do all this?" whispered a young soldier to his comrade. "It's impossible." Elias glanced at the soldier and gave a faint smile. "Nothing is impossible if you think and act fast." The battle continued for hours. The attackers tried to adapt, forming new formations, changing tactics, and increasing numbers. But Elias was always ahead. He predicted their movements, set clever traps, and used the city as a labyrinth against them. The alien soldiers learned quickly, striking with precision and confidence. During a brief pause in the fighting, Elias addressed the council via holocom. "They will come again," he said. "Bigger, stronger, and faster. But we are not the same as we were yesterday. Your soldiers are learning, adapting, and gaining courage. That is the advantage humans bring. Not just strength, but the ability to inspire." Valen and Lura exchanged glances. For the first time, hope was genuine. They had seen the power of one human. They understood why the galaxy whispered about humans with fear and respect. As night fell, Elias led a daring maneuver. A group of enemy troops was advancing toward a critical energy hub that powered half the city's defenses. Instead of meeting them head-on, Elias sent small units to flank the attackers from multiple sides. Using shadows, ruined streets, and debris, they cut off escape routes. Elias moved at the front, striking with precision. Each move was deliberate, forcing the enemy into confusion. Within minutes, the entire advance was halted. Enemy soldiers either surrendered or retreated, stunned by the humans' tactics. Alien soldiers cheered quietly, unsure if it was safe to make noise. They had witnessed courage and brilliance they could hardly comprehend. The human had turned fear into hope, chaos into strategy, and despair into action. Later, Elias returned to a safe position overlooking the city. Smoke rose from fires and the sound of distant explosions continued, but now there was a sense of control. He watched the alien soldiers moving with confidence, holding positions they had once thought impossible to defend. Valen's voice came through the comm again. "Captain Elias, your strategy, your courage, it is inspiring. You have done more than save lives. You have changed the way we fight." Elias shrugged lightly. "I only show what humans do best. We adapt, we improvise, and we never give up. That is how we survive even when outnumbered." Laura added quietly, almost to herself. "It is not just fighting skill. It is the way he makes others believe they can win. That is terrifying to our enemies." Elias looked at the horizon. The attackers would come again, but he had already set the stage. Alien soldiers now fought not with fear but with courage and creativity. One human had changed the balance of the battle, showing that numbers and technology were not enough to win against bravery and ingenuity. And so, as night covered the city, the legend of the human grew. One being, standing against an overwhelming force, turning fear into hope, chaos into strategy. The attackers would learn soon enough why the galaxy feared humans, and why legends often underestimated them at their peril. Dawn broke over Karath Prime, painting the city in pale gold, but the enemy was relentless. From the horizon, waves of ships approached, more organized and heavily armed than before. The defenders braced for the attack, their nerves stretched thin from hours of fighting. But there was one who was calm, Captain Elias. He stood atop a ruined tower looking over the streets below. The alien soldiers, once scattered and terrified, now moved with purpose. Their confidence had grown, inspired by Elias's courage and clever tactics. Yet he knew this attack would test them more than any before. "Listen up," Elias called to the nearby units, his voice firm and clear. "They will come hard and fast, but that does not mean we are powerless. Follow my lead, stay sharp, and remember, fight smart, not just hard." The soldiers nodded, their fear replaced by determination. They had learned to trust him, to move beyond rules, and to think for themselves. That trust would be their edge. Elias's plan was daring. The enemy would focus on the city center, expecting a direct defense. But he had other ideas. He divided the defenders into small mobile squads, each with specific targets: supply lines, heavy weapon depots, and command units. The human himself would lead a strike team behind enemy lines, targeting their main command hub. Valeen and Laura watched on holoscreen as Elias moved. "He does not hesitate," Laura murmured. "He takes the fight to them, not just defends." "That is bold," Valeen nodded. "Bold, yes. But that is why he succeeds. He changes the game. The attackers do not expect this. Humans are unpredictable. That is their strength." Behind enemy lines, Elias and his strike team moved quickly and silently. The enemy's confidence was high. They believed no one could reach their command hub without being detected. But Elias had studied their patrol patterns and communication signals. He knew where to strike, when to move, and how to create confusion. A small squad of enemy soldiers approached a corridor, unaware of the trap ahead. Elias raised a hand. With a precise throw, a compact device released a blinding flash, temporarily disabling their vision. Before they could react, Elias and his team struck, taking control of the corridor in seconds. The enemy was disoriented, scrambling for order. "Move! Quickly!" Elias ordered. "Don't give them time to regroup." The strike team advanced, taking control of weapons and communication nodes. Within minutes, key parts of the enemy command structure were disabled. Orders from the main fleet became confused, delayed, or contradictory. The advantage shifted to the defenders. Back in the city, the alien soldiers noticed the change immediately. Enemy units slowed, lost coordination, and became easier targets. Smaller squads of defenders took advantage, striking where the enemy was weakest. Explosions echoed through the streets as supply depots were sabotaged, communication towers disabled, and armored vehicles destroyed. For the first time in hours, the alien leaders allowed themselves to hope. "It's working," Valeen said quietly. "The human is making them falter." Laura nodded. "Not just fighting. He is teaching our soldiers, showing them how to act. This is more than a battle. It is a lesson in courage and strategy." Meanwhile, Elias moved deeper into enemy territory. He spotted the main command hub ahead, guarded by a dozen heavily armed soldiers. Approaching directly would be suicide. Instead, he used a narrow service tunnel, emerging behind the guards. With calm precision, he neutralized the first few silently. The rest were caught off guard, panic spreading quickly. "Surprise is a weapon," he whispered to his team. "Use it well." The command hub's control panels were soon under his team's control. He broadcast a false set of commands to the enemy fleet, causing confusion and delaying reinforcements. The enemy ships overhead misinterpreted orders, hesitated, and failed to coordinate attacks. The defenders below seized the opportunity, pushing forward with renewed strength. As the battle raged, the alien soldiers grew bolder. They had seen their enemy falter, witnessed the humans' tactics, and realized they could fight in ways they never imagined. Fear had turned into courage, hesitation into action. A small squad led by one of Elias's students ambushed an armored unit, taking it down with skill and confidence. From the observation tower, Elias watched it all unfold. He knew the key to victory was not just defeating the enemy, but teaching the defenders to believe in themselves. "Courage spreads faster than fear," he said quietly. "Once they see they can fight, they will never give up." Hours passed. The enemy, previously relentless and confident, now faltered at every turn. Their attacks lacked coordination. Their forces were divided and morale was crumbling. Reports came in from the front lines. Enemy reinforcements were delayed, supply lines destroyed, and key weapons disabled. The human had not only fought, they had turned the battlefield into a labyrinth of confusion and traps. In the council chamber, Valen and Lura could hardly contain their amazement. "We thought we were doomed," Valen said. "But this human, he is not just fighting. He is changing the way we see ourselves. Our soldiers are no longer afraid. They are alive and they are strong." Lura's antennae twitched with awe. The galaxy feared humans, and now we understand why. Not for their size or weapons, but for their mind, their courage, and their ability to inspire others. By evening, the defenders had reclaimed much of the city. Enemy forces retreated in disarray, confused by the humans' tactics and the alien soldiers' newfound confidence. Fires still burned, and the streets were littered with debris, but hope was alive. The defenders were no longer just surviving, they were fighting back. Elias stood on a ruined tower looking at the city below. He knew the enemy would regroup. They would return, stronger and more organized. But for now, the tide had turned. The alien forces had learned to fight, to think, and to act with courage. "Rest for now," he told the soldiers nearby. "Tomorrow we fight again. But remember, it is not the strongest who wins. It is the cleverest, the fastest, and the bravest." The city echoed with quiet cheers. Alien soldiers had seen the power of one human, and it had changed everything. They would carry this lesson forward, knowing that even against overwhelming odds, victory was possible. As night fell over GalacticPrime, Elias gazed at the horizon. The enemy fleet had been delayed, their confidence shaken. The defenders had learned to move and think independently, inspired by his example. Valen's voice came through the comm one last time for the day. "Captain Elias, your actions today, they are beyond comprehension. You are not just a warrior. You are a teacher, a leader, and a symbol of hope." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "I do what any human would do. Fight, adapt, inspire. That is how we survive." And in the quiet of the night, as the city recovered from its first major wave of attacks, one truth became clear to everyone watching. Humans were not just fighters, they were forces of change. Their courage, intelligence, and unpredictability could turn the tide of war, even against impossible odds. The legend of the human had grown that day, no longer a distant myth, but a reality. One human had shifted the balance of battle, showing why civilizations across the galaxy whispered about humans with awe and fear. And the enemy? They would learn soon enough that a human could never be underestimated. The sun rose over GalacticPrime, casting a soft orange light across the ruined city. The fires of the previous battle still burned in some districts, but a new energy filled the streets. Alien soldiers moved with purpose, their eyes no longer filled with fear. They had survived impossible odds, and one human had shown them that courage and clever thinking could overcome even the most overwhelming enemy. Captain Elias stood on a high tower, scanning the horizon. The enemy fleet was still present, but their formation had broken. Communication was delayed, reinforcements were slow, and their morale had crumbled. The humans' plan had worked. Every enemy movement was slowed, every attack confused, and every retreat exploited. A squad of alien soldiers approached him, still in awe. One young soldier, her voice shaking slightly, asked, "Human, how can you fight like this? You are only one, yet you are stronger than all of them together." Elias crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "It's not about being stronger," he said simply. "It's about thinking, acting fast, and never giving up. One person can make a difference if they refuse to quit." The soldiers nodded, understanding dawning. They had watched him act, seen his courage, and learned from it. They were no longer just soldiers. They were fighters who could think for themselves. Across the battlefield, the enemy commanders grew frantic. Lieutenant Rylock, exhausted and frustrated, slammed a clawed hand onto his command console. "How can one human disrupt everything we planned?" he shouted. "They follow our moves perfectly. How is this possible?" General Torvik glared at the holographic map. "This is not just skill," he admitted reluctantly. "This is genius. One human is outsmarting an entire fleet. We underestimated them. This was a mistake. The human had not only disrupted their strategies, but had also turned the alien defenders into a coordinated and confident force. Every attack met resistance, every ambush had been anticipated, and every supply line had been sabotaged. The attackers began to retreat, their formations breaking under the pressure of confused commands and coordinated alien resistance. The human had turned a desperate fight into a clear victory. In the council chamber, Commander Valen and Advisor Laura watched the holoscreens. "It's incredible," Laura whispered. "He doesn't fight like anyone we've seen. And yet, the results? They are undeniable." Valen nodded, pride in his voice. "The legends are true. Humans are not just strong. They inspire courage. They make others believe they can win, even against impossible odds. That is why the galaxy fears them." The alien soldiers, inspired by Elias, were reclaiming their city block by block. The streets that had once been filled with chaos and destruction were now filled with organized squads of defenders, moving strategically, anticipating enemy movements, and striking decisively. Elias moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and tactical advice. He was not just a warrior, he was a teacher. The aliens were learning from him, growing stronger with every engagement. By midday, the enemy fleet had retreated far enough to be less effective. Alien soldiers celebrated small victories, their morale skyrocketing. They had begun to understand what humans could do, how a single person could change the course of an entire battle. Elias gathered a group of alien leaders for a brief strategy session. "The enemy will try to return," he said. "They'll regroup, bring reinforcements, and try again. But you are ready. You have learned to fight smart, move fast, and act independently. That is more important than any weapon." Valen nodded. "You've done more than save us, Captain. You've given our people hope, strength, and courage." Elias shrugged lightly. "I only show what humans do. We adapt, think, and inspire. That is what matters in any fight." The defeated enemy forces were in full retreat by evening. Ships lifted off in disorder, troops scattered, and supplies abandoned. Reports came in from every sector. Alien defenders were pushing forward, reclaiming territory and securing the city. Soldiers who had once cowered in fear now stood tall. They had learned to trust themselves, to act decisively, and to face overwhelming odds with courage. One young soldier, who had been trapped under rubble the previous day, now led a squad in a counterattack, using the tactics Elias had taught them. The human watched quietly from a vantage point, observing the transformation. He had fought, yes, but he had also empowered others to fight. That was the true measure of his impact. As night fell, the city was not yet fully rebuilt, but it was alive with hope. Fires still burned in some districts, but the streets were filled with determined defenders. Alien citizens came out of hiding, inspired by the bravery of their soldiers and the presence of the human who had changed everything. Elias walked among them, observing quietly. The human's presence had not only saved the city, but had left a lasting impression. The defenders had learned that courage, cleverness, and unity could overcome even the strongest enemy. Valen approached Elias as the council convened in the city hall. "Captain, your work here is done," he said. "The enemy is retreating. Our people are safe, but what you have given us goes beyond that. You have changed how we fight, how we think, and how we see ourselves." Elias nodded. "That was the goal. You don't need me to win your battles forever. You need to trust yourselves, to adapt and to act. That is what makes any society strong." Laura stepped forward, her voice full of admiration. You have shown us why humans are feared and respected across the galaxy. You are more than warriors. You are symbols of courage and hope." Elias smiled faintly. "Legends often grow from simple truths. Humans fight, adapt, and inspire. That is all." Over the next few days, the city slowly recovered. Alien soldiers repaired defenses, civilians returned to their homes, and the council planned for a future without fear. Stories of the humans' bravery spread quickly. Every soldier who had fought alongside him shared their experiences. Every citizen who had witnessed the battle told tales of courage, ingenuity, and leadership. The legend of the human was no longer just a story. It had become reality. One being had changed the course of an entire war, teaching an entire civilization the true meaning of courage. Even in the galaxy beyond GalacticPrime, whispers began to spread. Other civilizations spoke of the human who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. The myth had become tangible proof. Humans were not just fighters, they were game changers capable of inspiring hope, resilience, and courage wherever they went. As the sun set over the recovering city, Elias prepared to leave. His mission was complete. The defenders were stronger, more confident, and ready for any future attack. He had shown them what humans could do, and in doing so had left a mark that would last for generations. Valen and Lura watched him from the council chamber. "We will never forget this day," Valen said softly. Lura nodded. "The galaxy may have heard of humans before, but now, we know why they are feared. They are not just warriors. They are leaders, thinkers, and symbols of hope." Elias turned to the city one last time. "Remember," he said quietly, "it's not just weapons that win battles. It's courage, thinking fast, and never giving up. That is how humans survive, and that is how any civilization can thrive." And with that, he stepped toward the portal that would take him back to his own world. The defenders of GalacticPrime stood tall, no longer frightened, but empowered. They had witnessed the reality of a human's courage, and it had changed everything. The legend had become reality. One human had faced impossible odds, inspired hope, and left the galaxy with a clear message. Humans were forces of change that no enemy could ignore.